Hey everybody, I'm Christopher Green. You're tuning into AMTV, alternative media television, hard-hitting and in your face. Thank you for your tremendous support. Subscribe if you haven't already. On demand, start your free 14-day trial, $4.95 a month, $49.95 a year. But with your wallets, support us independently, alternatively. I wanted to get into just such an uplifting story today. You know, there has been such a fantastic recovery post the 2008-2009 engineered transfer of wealth, the trillions of dollars stolen from you literally by the barrel of a gun because people like George Bush said that the world was going to come to an end. Yeah, that's right. The world was going to come to an end if we didn't bail out the bankers, the banksters. People like Lloyd Blankfein, Goldman Sachs, John Thain, former executive at Merrill Lynch, Jamie Dimon, Chase Bank, the Wells Fargo CEO, which is engaged in his own scandal right now, strong-arming, opening up fake accounts to create millions of dollars of wealth for his own pockets and screw over the little people. But things are so great. And this gravy train that makes up Janet Hoare-Yellen at the printing presses, just opening her legs wide and just ushering out all that quantitative easing into all of our faces, just beautiful. 0% interest rates. Things are so great. And people are doing so well with their minimum credit card payments and inflated prices creating these new bubbles in housing, rents, and home ownership and these kinds of things, and food prices, steak, milk, food, eggs. We see this in the stock market too with an inflated bubble as these companies buy back all their own shares and the hedge funds rig it up on 20-to-1 leverage. All this kind of souping up for the world's elite. It's so strong and it's such a great recovery that not only are they considering negative interest rates, because 0% interest rates aren't good enough, I just wanted to highlight a story, which again, just only proves how good things are going, that there are more and more people now living in a van down by the river. You probably remember, what was it? It's escaping me. Fat guy, come on, help me out here. Chris Farley, right? You're going to live in a van down by the river. Literally, in America. It's such a strong recovery. You heard it from Chris Farley first. God rest his soul. R.I.P., fat man. You're going to be living in a van down by the river. As people literally are in places in our coastal elitist cities, where the super elite, meet with friends over cocktails and talk about Black Lives Matter. Like, oh God, it's a good thing we have a safe room in our apartment. Talk about politics. Things are so good that people are ditching their apartments because they can't afford it because of zero interest rate policy, now going to NERP, negative interest rates, and the hookering of Janet Hoare-Yellen and people like her predecessors, Helicopter Ben Bernanke, and people like Alan Greenspan even, who blew the first housing bubble, which again engineered the transfer of wealth so that they could bail out the billionaires. People are just ditching. Things are so good. People are ditching their apartments to live what they call, and they're kind of being hopeful about this, what they call the van life. Yeah, it's now popular to be living in a van down by the river, just like Chris Farley had warned us that you'd be living in a van down by the river. You take a look at these pictures. One guy decides to live in a van. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this at all, by the way. In fact, there's extremely talented, successful people throughout history. A lot of them started homeless. I mean, really, because that's what it takes to build things and creative ideas. So I know a lot of people that's where they started. Actually, probably the person that's most famous, love him or hate him, is Glenn Beck. That guy was homeless before he built the Blaze. Love or hate the guy was homeless. There's a lot of people like that because that's what it takes to take risks and to build things. Most people aren't willing to make that kind of sacrifice. So there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with off-grid living in these kinds of things. But what the story highlights is how expensive things have become and such a massive redistribution of engineered wealth that all we have now in American society is the super elite up here, sitting with their tea and crumpets along the elitist coastal cities in the New York area or, Silicon Valley, talking about politics. the top 0.0000001% courtesy of zero interest rates and soon to be negative hookering interest rates. And everybody else at the bottom rung just sticking here eating dirt at the bottom. You know, almost like a Shakespeare play where they're just throwing the breadcrumbs down to the groundlings. There is no middle class in America anymore because of these criminals, because of the media, because of the government, because of these elitists sitting in their room with their tea and crumpets, financing through their foundations and this kind of thing, this kind of world. Again, this is what quantitative easing, folks, 0% interest rate and all these things help. It only helped the super elite. It destroys everybody else for a reason. Transfer all the wealth before the reset button. Transfer all the wealth before an escalation of global war. Take out the little people, evaporate the middle class, make them dependent on the government and the new socialist police state, while the super elite confiscate everything and get away with it, as was the case in 2008 and 2009, with not a single criminal going to jail. People like MF Global head John Corzine, who took money out of his own client customer accounts, but because he financed a large portion of Barack Obama's campaign, sails off into the sunset. So you've got people living in vans down by the river. It's popular now. Recent graduate of the University of Southern California. Isn't that great? You graduate from USC and you live in a van down by the river. Another gentleman, entrepreneur, awesome what you're doing, dude, living in a van down by the river. He's got on his van, says never stress. But these people are not alone, folks. Last year, 4,600 cars and RVs were used as homes, according to the Los Angeles Times. LA, Los Angeles County, like many cities, has a housing shortage. This, coupled with 3.1% vacancy rate, makes affordable living in LA an oxymoron. You know, you look at Los Angeles, you look at places like Beverly Hills, for example, but you even get out of there, you look at, Silicon Valley, even places like New Zealand, where a lot of the hedge fund elite have been moving. You can't buy anything, a dump, for less than $1 million next to the freeway. That is a fixer-upper, by the way. Stratification of wealth, engineered redistribution of wealth for a reason, eradication of the middle class, so everybody's a groundling and a peasant, the sheeple, the sheep, the flock. So it's dependent, and they are dependent, and we are all dependent on this new, whatever this shit show is that makes up America today. Happens and is happening for a reason. Someone says, minimizing my bills can essentially allow me to work less hours. And then they see all the, they talk about the problems and the strife that they're going through, $1,000 in parking tickets. There's a picture of a young lady. She's, sitting in some kind of van or RV. She's kind of looking out the window. I mean, this is what the millennial generation has to look forward to. Engineered house prices, engineered stock prices, engineered, more importantly, educational prices, like this lad who graduated USC and lives in a van down by the river, just like Chris Farley warned about, because there is no options. But the super elite are making all the money. In fact, they're rigging tuition prices even higher through student loans, which, by the way, you can't default on. You can default on everything else. The too big to fail banks can default on whatever they want and get bailed out, but not you, young children that, are trying to get, an education. All this fueled by cheap money, cheap debt, 0% interest rates, and engineered for a reason to keep you paying into the system and dependent on the system for the rest of your lives. Why do you think people have so much trouble getting out of credit card debt? It's engineered that way. Why do you think you need a mortgage and you can't pay cash? It's engineered that way. Why do you think in order to buy a new car, a lot of these new cars cost 50 grand, and you've got to take out a 5, 6, and now 7-year loan? Because it's engineered that way for a reason. Again, create money out of thin air from the criminal Federal Reserve, give it to the banksters, the hedge funds, Ponzi up the market, they cash out. It's the very definition of a Ponzi right before the next collapse, which is exactly what they did in 2008 and 2009. And don't tell me it's not happening again, because it is. Here's the evidence of Barack Obama's recovery, of Janet Yellen's recovery, even tiny houses. And again, these are cool strategies of independent living, but it's a byproduct of the sheer fact that the younger generation and even the older generation, they've been eradicated out of the middle class. They can't buy a home. So what do? Well, tiny homes. Let's make it fashionable. Let's make it cool. It's all a byproduct of this stratification and engineered redistribution of wealth. And again, there's intent behind it. So what we have now are the terrifying signs of a looming housing crisis, a stock market bubble, a bubble in food prices, all these things. The only thing that isn't a bubble probably right now, but was a bubble, which collapsed, which only shows you what a collapse looks like and how engineered some of these things are, is oil. Everything else, Ponzi'd up to the stratosphere. It's one big party. And instead of, it's 1929 all over again, the roaring 20s, baby. And instead of hiking interest rates and normalizing and allowing peak to trough to peak to valley and allowing a free market capitalist system to exist here in the United States, they're only fueling the fire. Terrifying signs of a looming crisis. Terrifying signs of economic collapse. But on a positive flip side, they're selling $43 martinis at a San Francisco bar. This is, again, what the New World Order elite are sipping as they talk about politics. They're bottling fog now for $43 a martini. There's a common misconception, these lies, these untruths that are sold to the educational and public school system, which is really just a slave ship, really just jail. Untruths like, hey, to make more money, you've got to work harder. Here's a very specific example. Do you think any of these New World Order elite are working any harder? No, they're not. They don't have to do anything to make more money. The whole system's engineered in their favor. In fact, they can sit and sip fog martinis at $50 a pop and make more money while they're talking about you, the lower rung and the lower class. The deplorables, as Hillary Clinton tells you. Again, all these untruths, well, you've got to work hard, to make more. Like, no, you don't. See, the globalist elite are all about productivity. Less work. Again, they're focused on living the lifestyle and transferring that money from generation to generation. The super elite, while at the same time crushing you, your family and friends, and eradicating the middle class through social engineering and brainwashing. Kind of appalling, isn't it? I mean, could you imagine you're just at a bar and they're like, good day, sir. We've got a wonderful selection on the menu today. A fog martini is just, And they're like, oh, guys like wearing a monocle, and a cane. Yeah, give me one of those, kind sir. Yeah, please, I'll take a fog martini. Have you heard about those Black Lives Matter movement? They're so irritating. Capping a great show, guys. Thank you so much. Your tremendous support. All of you make what we do worth it, and I just can't thank you guys enough. Honestly, I'm truly humbled by it. I tried to post a video yesterday that got kind of like ditched because I forgot to press the recording button, but through grace, the grace of God, you honest to God, keep me going, keep our crew going. And the changes that we've seen just in the last few days, weeks, with more and more content, better content, building our community, it's just incredible. And I want to thank you guys. Thank you for supporting us so we can go to war. We can go after scumbags that sip, fog martinis and destroy everything that's good about America, our humanity, people in general. We can change this, right? These people are scared of you. Why do you think the hedge fund managers and all these guys are moving to New Zealand and they've got their compounds and their underground bunkers? And George and Amal Clooney, Central Intelligence, have their safe rooms. Because they know at a certain point, at a tipping point, and I think we're there, because again, half the country is a deplorable, according to Hillary Rotten Clinton. That's how she's labeled us, or we're all KKK, white nationalist, alt-right people. The tipping point is actually now. It's been building for nearly, I would argue, 10 years. You have the power, we have the power to change everything and to hold these people accountable. They still think they got away with it. These banksters still think they got away with it. Politicians still think they got away with it. I'm here to tell you, you didn't. The people The people have spoken. The people have their metaphorical pitchforks out. And you, the establishment, are losing control. Thanks, guys. I'm Christopher Green. Hard hitting in your face. If you haven't already, start your free trial. 14-day free trial on demand. $4.95 a month, $49.95 a year. This is war.